I'll now call the meeting to order, and the time is 5 p.m. We'll now proceed with item number 2, approval of the agenda. That the agenda for the Committee of Adjustment Property Standards Committee meeting of Tuesday, June 27th, 2023 be approved as presented. Do I have a mover?
So moved.
And a seconder to adopt the agenda as presented? Lewis, Craig. All in favor? Motion carried. Are there any declarations of interest? None? So item number 4 is a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting held on June 6th, 2023. I have a recommendation that the Committee of Adjustment Property Standards Committee minutes dated June 6, 2023 be accepted as presented. Do I have a mover? Jim? And a seconder for this motion? Craig? Any discussion on the minutes?
I didn't see any errors.
No? Okay. Then I will call the question. All in favor? Motion is carried. Item number 5.1 is a recommendation that the Committee of Adjustment approve minor variance 2023-03 for 640 and 642 West Street with the following conditions. The balance, if any, of all outstanding taxes, including penalties and interest, shall be paid to the town of Prescott. Any changes resulting from the severance shall be communicated to the town of Prescott, and that any mitigation measures shall be implemented prior to the severance being deemed completed, including a prepared survey to be registered showing all setbacks, dwellings, and parking areas. A fence shall be installed to the maximum height allowed on each side and rear lot line as per zoning bylaw 09/2009. Do I have a mover? Lewis. And a seconder? Craig. Any discussion? Sean Merriman, Manager of Building and Bylaw, will speak to the report. Mr. Merriman.
Through you, Madam Chair. The subject property is on East Street, on West Street, but on the east side of West Street. And it's located between the intersections of James Street West and Wood Street, about two lots down from Wood Street at the north. It has been a duplex for a very long time. It's been recognized as a duplex by the town. And it also was one of those duplexes that had a 0-meter setback to the land to the north of the site and to the road when the duplex was there. A couple of years ago, the town became aware that it was in extremely bad shape. One person had already moved out, one person was still living in it, but when the town investigated, we found that the foundation was collapsing at the one corner and the roof was falling in another section on the roof. The owner at the time, an elderly gentleman, was given a notice to clean it up, and he wasn't proceeding very fast when it was picked up by a developer who did demolish the building with the understanding that there was a duplex on it and that he had the right to replace it if he so chose. After he got that completed, he kind of, I think in his own mind, got thinking he'd like to put a small apartment building. But from the feedback that he got from both the town and the neighbors, he was convinced it was going to be a little bit more complicated. So he sold it to the current people, which is the Mulders from Spencerville. We spoke with them and talked with them, staff did, and on May 25th, 2023, they submitted a plan for them to build 2 semis, or basically a duplex, but with the lot severed, of course, down the middle. It was circulated to all departments within the town, and it was also posted, and it was still posted as of the other day. And all tenants, all people within 60 meters were notified that the meeting was being held. So the owner and his designer took the time and recognized the opportunity to, like, if the house is down, let's reset the house so that we can basically fulfill as many obligations of the zoning bylaw as possible. And they basically managed to set absolutely everything other than the interior side yard setback. It's supposed to be 2.4 meters, and the best that they could do was 2 meters, but they managed to get the front yard setbacks, the rear yard setbacks, lot coverage, even if just barely got covered. And so everything was basically able to set other than the interior side yard setback. This minor variance and or severance that's coming next will recognize, however, that it's not the perfect size lot. They are just slightly smaller than what would normally be requested in a plan of subdivision, at least under our current zoning bylaw. I can advise you with Bill 23 and with once our official plan is done, there's a good chance that these lots that we're creating here today will actually be closer to what the size will be in the new zoning bylaw when the time comes. Because it's literally just short. It's not short by, you know, an amazing amount. You're talking about, I believe you're supposed to have 2,917 square feet or something like that. And it's like just short. It's like right, really close to it. And you're, yeah, so they got 2,917 square feet is what the lots will have. You're supposed to have 2,960. You're talking about 45 square feet difference. When we took a look at the residential land use in the official plan, this land is residential under the official plan, and the zoning is R1, and the R1 zone permits a wide variety of uses, including semi-detached housing, which this would create. So, so then we take a look at it and we assess, you know, compare the new development to the existing community. It'll actually fit in better. It was one of the few houses that were actually tight to the street. The other ones were back a little bit. Now this one will be back as well. It doesn't really change the neighborhood because there was two dwellings there before, and there's still going to be 2 dwellings. The biggest difference is that it will provide almost a better affordable housing, because if it was a duplex, whoever bought it would have to have the money to buy 2 dwellings at once, whereas now it can be sold to 2 separate people. So when we do the policy review, the question is, does it meet the 4 tests? Is it minor in nature? Is it desirable and appropriate? And is it keeping with the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw and the official plan? So as I said, it is certainly unique in its own way because of the way West Street runs and everything else. So the lot isn't perfectly rectangular, perfectly square. It's got a little shift to it, I guess is what you would say. And like I said, the designer has taken the opportunity to make this new design work as much as he possibly can with the zoning bylaw, and still leave a little bit of room for whoever ends up owning it to do small things with it. So one of the things he did is he did meet the front yard setback, but he's got a little bit bigger in the backyard. When I asked him if he wanted to move it a little further back, he goes, Sean, but then they couldn't build a deck in the backyard. So like this way, he's kind of thought about this all ahead, what they're going to do with it. And he really did a nice job laying out the house where it's going to be. And the nice thing is, because it's oblong, little 2 meters is the very smallest point. It actually gets slightly bigger as you come towards the front. It's just at the back corners where it hits the 2 meters. And so due to the fact that instead of it's 2.4 to 2, staff certainly felt that it was a minor variance in this case. And it's minor in nature. Appropriateness, again, as we discussed, it's historically been a duplex. 2 semis is still the same thing. Basically, it's 2 dwellings. The only difference is that there will be slightly more affordable because whoever buys it would be only buying half of it at a time. So then the question is the intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. Well, semi-detaches were encouraged, so that this definitely meets the intent of the zoning bylaw. And it also, like I say, meets the intent of the official plan. So based on everything above, staff concluded that the relief being sought was reasonable for the redevelopment of 640 and 642 West Street. And we have put forth the conditions above based on that thought. And that concludes my report. There is an attachment of the minor variance application, including the breakdown of where the house would sit at the back, which is kind of what tells the best picture, I guess.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Is there any discussion on item 5.1? Jim?
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Mr. Merriman. On page 2 of your report talks about the minor variance that's required for the interior side yard, the relief required, and it goes on to say this minor variance will also recognize the maximum lot frontage and lot area. So this variance is going to cover those 3 aspects to allow the lot creation.
Well, technically, the severance recognizes the lot frontage and the lot sizing. And I was under the impression we were doing the severance first. So then once it was met, then you basically got an existing lot of record and you're trying to, that's the only thing left. So I did mention it in this report so that you were aware that it was still being addressed. But it's still not really a condition per se of the minor variance. It's more of a condition of the severance.
Okay, I have no issue with the minor variance at all. It's just, I guess when a lot's created, it's supposed to conform to the requirements of the bylaw for frontage area and interior side yard.
Correct.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Chair.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Sean, I would assume they're just gonna have single car garage right in there and side split with the front porch.
From talking with them, it doesn't appear so. They're going to allow parking out front. And
They're just gonna do that, okay.
we're trying to keep the costs down as low as they could. And the garage took up a fairly big footprint that would push them past the 35%.
Probably just a slab on grade, 800 square feet split and then just a gravel.
I don't have any questions or concerns. I think it fits in with the official plan, you know, intensifying the, residential capacity in the community.
They're adding value to that area.
It's gonna look a lot better.
Yeah, better than what the neighbors are. I mean, I live a block away, so I mean.
Sure, yes.
But also knowing how, like I develop in South Dundas and in Iroquois, and they do a nice job with all their buildings. They're probably one of the cleanest contractors I've seen in that county when we build, so I think anything they do, that they should be good at it, so I have no issues.
Okay, all right. So I will now call the question. All in favor? Motion is carried. Item 5.2 is a recommendation that the Committee of Adjustment approve the proposed consent application, the severance 2023-03, subject to the following conditions. The balance of any outstanding taxes, including penalties and interest, and any local improvement charges, if applicable, shall be paid to the town. Pending the outcome of the minor variance application to be considered regarding this property, and that all conditions are adhered to. And that the developer service each lot independently, including the costs involved, an acceptable reference plan or legal description of the severed lands and the deed or instrument conveying the severed lands demonstrating the new property lines for both properties shall be registered and submitted to the town. Do I have a mover? Craig, seconder for discussion? Jim? Sean Merriman, Manager of Building and Bylaw, will speak to the report. Mr. Merriman.
Through you, Madam Chair. Yeah, so this is a continuation of the first report, really. And like I say, we already discussed the fact that this duplex that was destroyed was built back in the early 1900s, along with the rest of that whole neighborhood. So regardless of the demolition that was required, the property maintains the right and the ability to allow for a duplex. So because there was a duplex there before, it could be a duplex again. And as I said earlier, after the demolition, the owner decided to resell the property, and a new owner has acquired the property, being the Mulders out of Spencerville. After some discussion and their designers, it was determined that the best solution was to sever the lot almost perfectly down the middle. The consent, if approved, will create the same number of dwellings as there were previously and will create more affordable home ownership options by allowing each semi to be sold individually. This section of land has been proposed by a survey diagram showing the current and suggested new lot lines. The application was submitted on March 25th, 2023. Again, the mailing list for a 60-meter buffer was created and notices were mailed out to the residents, and town departments were also notified. And the only concern that had been expressed earlier was in relation to a parking, and it was addressed actually when they submitted the application, that there'd be room for at least 2 vehicles in it. When we move down into the regulatory control review on the provincial policy statement, part of the policy statement says must be undertaken and reviewed that are consistent with the tests of under the Planning Act. Proposed severed lands are located in a settlement area designation, so that is good. The PPS provides that the settlement area shall be the focus of growth and development. So again, this is all good. And the vitality and regeneration should be promoted, which is basically what this is doing. Development should be directed to these areas where intensification opportunities exist. So we're not really intensifying it, but we're not making it any less neither. So it's not going back to a single family home. And such development shouldn't create an undue burden on services and stuff. Well, the services are already there, both water and sewer. So this will not result in any land use conflicts. So this is all good things. Sorry. So under the official plan, as mentioned earlier, this subject property is residential. The plan allows for this type of development as there is no impact on the town's ability to provide services. And zoning is R1, so it's not like it requires a new zoning. And the property creating 2 semis would, meet the requirements of the zone 1. So the severance application has been attached. The site sketch is on there. As mentioned earlier, it is slightly under the square foot that would normally be allowed and slightly under the frontage required. However, it still meets the purposes of the creation of more affordable housing. And so therefore staff felt that they could support it.
Okay.
That's the end of my report.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion on item 5.2?
Just to say that we've done this before on other properties here in town, and I have no problem with it. I think it's going to be beneficial for the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you.
No, same, agree.
Okay,
No question.
no concerns? So I'll now call the question. All in favor? Motion is carried. New business. Does anyone have any new business they would like to speak to? Is there any media present? Nope. Item number 8 is adjournment. And I have a recommendation that the Committee of Adjustment Property Standards Committee meeting be adjourned. And the time is 5:23 p.m. Do I have a mover?
So moved.
Craig, and a seconder. Louis? All in favor?